My name is David LaMontagne. I graduated from the USC Entrepreneurial program in 1984. I became the founder and CEO of Vessel Assist Association of America and later selling that company. But first, I thought I'd tell you a little bit more about myself. I was really raised in Newport Harbor in a boating family where my dad was in the Navy and my mom raced sailboats. And I was just raised around boats as a kid. And living there, one of the best jobs to get was working on the Babel Island Ferry. And so when I was 16 years old, I got a job collecting coins on the ferry as passengers crossed. In that environment, you saw many times when cars would break down, and as a guy working on the ferry, you had to push the car off the ferry. And so once you push them off the ferry, then the next thing you know, you'd come back a trip or two later, and the car was still there, but the auto club was helping out the car. Maybe they needed fuel, maybe they needed a jump start, or there was mechanical failure, and they got towed away. So here I was sitting on a boat at the age of 16, and then 17, and then 18 as I got into college, and realizing that, gee, they got an auto club for cars, why don't they have an auto club for boats? As I watched the boats go by in the bay, and from time to time, they would break down as well. So this was in the back of my mind the whole time. To earn my way through college, I got my Coast Guard license. That way I could basically triple my pay rate that I was receiving at the Babel Island Ferry and other places that I was working in Newport Harbor at the same time, always with my captain's license. I knew what was going on with the United States Coast Guard, and it came to be that there was a thing called the Grace Commission Study under Ronald Reagan. And the Grace Commission Study focused on many different areas of the public sector, meaning to say areas that were done by government that could be done by private enterprise more efficiently and more effectively, and saving the taxpayers money. There's a whole lot of different things that were identified in the Grace Commission Study. One of those, however, was the fact that the Coast Guard was providing assistance to recreational boaters on the water in non-emergency situations with like a Coast Guard cutter, an 82-foot Coast Guard cutter and 13 personnel on board, basically about 13 times greater than the private sector could do it. So as a result of that, in 1984, which is the same time I was graduating, the Department of Transportation, which was running the Coast Guard at that time, issued a directive to the Coast Guard to no longer provide assistance to recreational boaters in need of non-emergency assistance. In other words, limit the Coast Guard usage and resources for people in real emergency situations, or maybe drug interdiction, or maybe defense of the coastal areas, but not for towing in a guy that got a flat tire, in essence, on the side of the road, but on the water. So somebody that ran out of battery power on the water, no reason to tow them in, when the private sector could do that instead. So in essence, at the same time, but I was graduating from college, the Coast Guard was changing their policy, making an opportunity available for private enterprise to step in. And so when I was in the entrepreneur program at USC, we needed to create a business plan, in essence, a senior thesis. And my senior thesis was on this concept that I gained in my head back when I was 16 years old. And here I was about, I guess, 4 years later, at about 22 or 21 years old, realizing that this is an opportunity to create a business plan on the business that I had thought of a lot when I was a lot younger, and the timing was perfect. So with that, I set off to find out what was going on with the Coast Guard policy and procedures and what the statistics were behind whether or not they could support a business for this non-emergency style towing and assistance on the water. However, the whole time for me, I thought the best thing to do was not necessarily be a towboat operator, but be more like the auto club of the nation. Because I knew that towboat operators would go into the business in every single harbor, whether it be San Diego or Chesapeake Bay or Seattle or Miami Beach. Somebody was going to go into the towing business, but somebody needed to come along and round up all these individual tow providers and put them under one name. So in essence, after graduation in 1984, at the top of my class, which was really nice feather in my cap, I went off to try to go ahead and start this business. I had created a business plan in school, and I went off to go to find funding. Gaining funding was very difficult at, again, 21 or 22 years old, and a little bit green behind my ears in the world of business. But I was successful at getting some family and friends to invest, and we started up with one operation in Newport Harbor, Newport Beach, California. At first, the business plan that I did in school was rather large in scope. It entailed buying many boats, getting financing on those boats, and going into the business all at the same time with about 7 boats and all that capital costs to do that with no customer base. It became apparent that either that wasn't reasonable, or I wasn't going to get the funding to be able to do that. So as a result, it made more sense to start with just one boat. So what I was able to do was find one boat for sale. And that boat, at the time, the sellers of the boat wanted about $25,000 for the boat. So I went down to take a look at the boat. I didn't think it was worth $25,000. So I went to get a survey on the boat. I got a survey on the boat that said, in the survey value of the boat, said that the boat was worth $15,000. Why? Because I told the surveyor that that was the value of the boat. So the surveyor wrote up a value of $15,000. I gave that to the seller. The seller said, okay, we'll sell the boat to you for $15,000. I said, great, thanks. With that, then I went down and did about $10,000 worth of work on the boat myself, meaning to say I spent about 2 weeks or so working on the boat while it was still owned by the previous party. Working on the boat, bringing it up to shape. I hired the same surveyor. He came out to evaluate the boat. He provided a new value of $25,000 on the boat. As a result of that, I took the $25,000 survey to the bank and got the bank to give me a 70% loan-to-value loan on a $25,000 boat. I was able to get $15,000 to buy the boat. So with no cash in the deal, I was able to have a boat already at no cash in the deal, 100% financing for a boat. We then took that one boat and started the business, because we had to be in the towing business ourselves with our own boat, because nobody would believe us that we were going to be towing if we didn't have our own boat. So in essence, we created a prototype. We put the brand on the side of the boat, and I hired a guy to operate the boat that very first summer, and I actually operated it that very first winter, and for the subsequent 4 years or so during the down months to save cash flow. And in any case, what would occur is that people would come up to the boat show and they would say, gee, this sounds like a great idea. For only $100 I can sign up and get free tow. And I said, you sure can. They said, great. So they would sign up right there on the spot. They would give me a check, and I would go down and run down to the bank, and I'd go to my office and I would send them a card. And then about 6 months later or so, they would call for assistance, and I'd run down to the boat. I'd hop on the boat. I'd go out there myself, and I'd tow them in. They said, boy, you sure did what you said you would do. And then the following year, the best part was for only at that time, probably 29-cent stamp, I would send them a renewal notice, and $100 would come back in the mail. Other independent providers with known brand name came along, and they said that, gee, can we use your brand name if I do all your towing in the harbor? They would say to me. And I would say, so I will market the vessel assist concept, and you can be the towing provider in the harbor. They said that's a great idea. So instead of us purchasing boats, which was originally in the business plan, we didn't have to purchase any boats. We just went out there and subcontracted with guys that were already in the business, that were already licensed professionals and experienced. We just put our brand on them and made sure that they had a minimum set of qualifications to make them be a vessel assist provider. With that concept, in essence, we took it nationwide. Over about a 6 or 7 year period or so, it took to do the West Coast United States. And within the next period of time, probably about another 6 years or so, we covered the entire eastern seaboard. So within about 12 years or so, we were a nationwide company providing vessel assistance services, which is a jump start, a delivery of fuel, towing a boat in to recreational boaters around the entire United States, Mexico and Canada and Puerto Rico, all for an annual fee, just like the Yacht Club, where you get a membership. On an annual basis, you get a membership card. For an average of about $100 a year, you would get free towing and assistance nationwide. After a period of time, we started expanding our product line to include recreational boat insurance, which complemented our product offering, as well as another offering called Trailer Assist, which was on-road trailer towing for boaters. After approximately 15 years in the business, we cut a deal with the nation's largest retail operation called West Marine. When we cut the deal with West Marine, they put us in all their retail outlets across the United States. Originally, we were selling basically kind of through direct mail and boat shows and word of mouth. When we got to be with a retailer, we really were able to solidify our sales channels throughout the United States, and we took off like wildfire. At that point, we were growing always in the 20 percentile for about 4 or 5 years, and that was about the point where I felt a lot of stability within the organization. And I want to mention, prior to that, there was a time of instability when the Coast Guard took a look at possibly going back in the business of towing. And it was a scary time, because the Coast Guard set about having hearings around the United States, and they wanted to hear from the recreational boaters who were now being charged for services, and there was a possibility that the political pendulum was going to swing back, and the Coast Guard was going to outlaw the business of towing, and they were going to go back into it themselves. That put our entire investment at risk. So we hired a lobbyist, and spent about a year or two fighting and writing letters, going back to Washington, D.C., in creating a lobby entity and creating a lobby arm to fight back against the pressures of the Coast Guard to try to get back into the business. And we kept the Coast Guard from getting in the business of towing and assistance, and as a result, from that time on, the government never went back into the business, and the business became, again, a stable business going forward. Another major event that occurred was after about 19 years for me in the business, we were bought out by a company called Boat US, and about 5 years after that, Boat US sold to Berkshire Hathaway. So now Vessel Assist, the trademark out of USC that got started right here in the Entrepreneur program, is now part of Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett's portfolio, which is a feather in my cap, and the USC's cap. Okay.